Whoa, it's a little deep. And it's spring snow, which means it's avalanche season. So it's not really a good time to hike or camp. But it's a good time to maybe just sit back, relax, while I wait for the snow to melt. Hope you enjoy. Well, I'm done my coffee, but it's a beautiful day. It's sunny, there's no wind, and it's starting to warm up a little. It's not hot, but it's a lot better than the super chill I had a few weeks ago, where it was really, really cold. Now every day it just warms up a little bit at a time, and soon it's going to be spring. And I know a lot of you out there are just itching to get out. You've been cooped up too long. This is going to be a boom year for camping, that's for sure. But right now, at least for me, is not a good time for camping at all. Because as it gets warmer, the snow melts, and if you're near the mountains, you know it's avalanche season. Not only that, the trails are muddy and slippery and you could hurt yourself, and the back roads are still impassable. So, I'm not camping. What I'm going to be doing is preparing for camping. Few things, a few tips for get you prepared for spring, but I also want to do a few updates and a few new ideas that I hope you will enjoy. But first, I think I need another coffee. Now, a lot of you will probably remember when I first got this fiberglass camper, I did a series of tests about a year ago to see how well it heats up and how well it retains that heat using the propane furnace as an example. So what I did is I did some tests, and that showed me how efficient it was without any changes to the trailer itself. After that, I made some changes. I added a lot more insulation. I have covers on the windows. According to the weather report, I am going to get those same temperatures, so I can do that experiment again, and then we can see, did it really make a difference? I guess if I had to make a duh statement, it would be a lot of things have changed in the last year. Not only in life and in the world, but certainly for camping, because places have not been opened up in the last little while. Now they're starting to open up, but are they going to be the same? Probably not. And why is because, well, a lot of places have not been well maintained, especially when things were shut down. There are places that were overused and they need to be restored. Privatization, new regulations, the list goes on and on. Plus, because there's so many people that have just bought new RVs and campers, there's going to be far more competition this year than any other year in the past. So I wouldn't make any assumptions that the favorite place you used to have is still available or is still the same. I encourage everybody to go online and do some checking, do some research, make sure things are open. Make sure there's, if you get a chance, if you're planning on just camping locally, before you load up your RV or your camper, just make a little day trip in your car and just see how well they are, how well they've been maintained. And sadly, there are less campsites this year than in most. I've only heard about things shutting down. I never seem to hear about anything opening up. So be aware of that and plan for it. Have your plan A, your plan B, and your plan C. But one thing I did notice when I was using it during the winter time is although I could heat it up pretty evenly inside the camper, there were pockets of cold air. There were a bit of a problem. And those were the pockets of air underneath these benches in the four corners because they're pretty sealed up. The only way to get into these is through the top, and when the cushions are on, there's no circulation in them whatsoever. And here's the problem. If the trailer is super, super cold for a long period of time, or at least a day, and you try to heat it up, well, those areas don't heat up. They remain cold, and they prevent you from getting the optimal amount of heat in the trailer. What these needed was a little bit of ventilation. And went to the hardware store, bought these little 1-inch vents, and here's what I did with them.
After marking a total of 8 spots in each corner of the 2 storage areas, I then proceeded to make a huge mess of fiberglass dust and flakes. Of course I was wearing a mask for this. The vents just pop in place with no glue required. Each vent that's placed near the top has another one at the bottom to allow warm air to enter from above and the cold air to escape below.
Woohoo! It's a cold one in here. No heat on. I wanted it to be cold for the second part of my heating experiment. Right now, it's just under freezing. However, outside, it's getting cold rather quickly. It's -6 Celsius right now with a wind chill of -14. Now, I have mentioned wind chill in the inside of my camper before, and I got a lot of comments, some of them very sarcastic, like, well, if you have wind chill inside your camper, I guess you better close all your windows. Ho, 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 ho. Some people just don't understand wind chill. Let me explain it to you. Wind chill is what it feels like. It feels colder. However, it does have the effect on the inside of a camper. Let me tell you why. Although the temperature inside cannot get below -6, it's not going to go to -14, it will affect the rate of cooling. And that is very important when you're trying to heat up a trailer. If there is a cold wind blowing on it, it is going to cool down rapidly. If there was no wind, there might actually be some warm pockets around the trailer and underneath. It affects the cooling rate, and that is important if you're trying to retain heat. Now, I haven't been able to do this experiment because I was looking for a specific temperature inside, and it's -3.2. Well, right now, using the digital thermometer, which you can't see, but I can record here, it's actually only -0.9. So what I have to do is I have to cool down the inside of the camper a little bit more. I'm just going to open up the vent, I'm going to open up the windows, and when it reaches -3.2, I can do this experiment.
But first, let's go back to April 2020 when I started this test. That's when I filmed a clock and thermometer as the furnace heated up the cabin from -3.2 Celsius to 20 degrees Celsius. Without any additional insulation, it took 30 minutes. Now back to the present and the same test almost a year later.
Camera's on. Okay, now I'm going to turn the furnace on.
The difference was more added insulation in the corner storage areas, behind the galley, and over the windows. The result was that it actually took 5 minutes longer. So the obvious question is, why would it take longer to heat the same camper from the same starting temperature with the same furnace when the only known variant is that the camper was more insulated?
Well, you know, that's a really good question, and I wish I had the definitive answer why adding more insulation didn't help with the heat up. But I think there is probably some variables that I didn't really take into account. Like I believe a year ago when I tried the heat up, the temperature during the day was probably rising a little bit, Whereas I did it this time, a cold front was coming in, and as I was heating up, the temperature outside was actually going down a little. So that could certainly account for a few minutes. But why the insulation didn't seem to make any difference at all is a bit of a puzzle. I'm sure if I did it 2 or 3 or 4 times, I'd probably get a few more variants, but I don't think it's going to change much. One thing that I can think of is the insulation I did put in is mostly on the lower part of the camper. I really didn't do anything above. And where I was measuring was actually about this level. This is where the temperature sensor was, because this is the area or the level that I sleep. But whatever, I'm going to live with the results and try to improve them. But there's still a second part of the experiment, is when I get up to room temperature, how long does it take to cool?
In this side-by-side comparison of the before time on the left and the after on the right, the furnace is turned off at 20 degrees Celsius. My theory was that more insulation would help the trailer retain heat longer, and after an hour, there should be clear results. Now, although there was a slight improvement, it did not match my expectations. Although in some parts of the race it was up to 1.8 degree heat gain, at the end it was merely a single degree.
I was a little disappointed in the results. I had hoped that if I could do a few minor little tweaks, add a few recycled materials as insulation, that it would perhaps reduce the amount of heat loss. Now, I was actually my target, and I didn't say that at the beginning, I was hoping I could save 50% of my heat after an hour. And from my calculations, I only saved 35%. So there's more work to be done.
Perhaps the wind chill did cool it down faster, or maybe it was the addition of those storage vents, the poor R value of the insulation, or just the phase of the moon. Who knows?
But did I lose anything? Well, the thing is, the insulation I did put in didn't really cost me anything at all. You know, some aluminum tape, a few dollars, but I didn't invest a lot, and that's a good thing. Chances are there is probably a insulating material that's relatively thin that could go in like an eggshell style trailer or camper that would reduce it or improve the insulating capabilities. And I'm going to keep researching. Maybe I'll find something. But you can't take into account, or you can't compare it to a normal house, because houses have a lot of insulation and they're very, very efficient. That's what you're paying for when you're buying a new house. And there had been times, you know, in a house where a furnace would go off, and I've experienced this for myself, that it'd be super, super cold out and you wouldn't even know there was a problem for like 2 or 3 hours. Because there's houses that only lose 1 degree of heat per hour. Well, I don't know if any campers can do that, especially an eggshell camper, but it doesn't mean I'm going to give up. There's other things that I can try in the future. And the other thing is, most of the insulation I was doing was in the lower pockets. I really haven't done anything above, except for the windows. And so there's always room for improvement, and I never give up. Well, I shouldn't say that. Because there are some experiments which I just say stop. Like the wind turbine experiment, or we're not going to talk about that right now. But yeah, I could say at least I had some gain here, and it encourages me enough to try it again later on. Well, I think I've pretty well covered insulation and installation and ventilation for this video, and I'm sure it's boring the hell out of a lot of people, so let's talk about something different. How about camping and what I do to prepare when it's a new season? Because things are warming up, so I'm going to have to prepare for being able to travel again and travel for long periods. What do I do to prepare? Now, because I travel for seasons, I can't carry everything around with me at the same time. I just don't have all the room in my camper. So I take some things and I put them in storage, and I take other things out of storage. But what are the important things for me when I'm camping? Well, one thing that's really important is that I don't overpack. I don't bring so much stuff that there's no more room, and more importantly, that I don't have so much clutter that when I actually need something, I can't find it. Like, imagine if I couldn't find duct tape. Oh, scary thought. Do some checks. This is really important because if your camper has been sitting for a year or several months, there are several things you've got to look at. And the number one thing is check your fire extinguisher. Make sure it's still fully functional. Give it a shake. Make sure that it's still in the green section of the dial, that it's still usable, and make sure it's accessible. Also, your first aid kit. Check to make sure everything is in place. You might have used something and not replaced it, but there are things in a first aid kit that may expire as well. So please check that. Propane, check your propane tank if you're using propane. If you don't know how much is in it, weigh it. You can figure that out. Always start with a full tank of propane in the season if you're actually using it for cooking and heating. Other things, your tires. Check your tires. Make sure the tire pressure is what it should be. Make sure the tread's fine. And it's always a good idea that if you do get your trailer serviced, don't do it in like May. Do it in February, so you're not in a lineup for people that are trying to get things done, and then you're all stressed out anyway. You don't want to be stressed when you're just ready to camp out. You want to have a good time. Now, isn't the reason we go out camping to have a good time in the first place? It's just that not everybody agrees as to what a good time is. For some, it's peace, quiet, tranquility, breathing in that fresh air, and being one with nature, in enhancing your soul. For others, it's a, hey dude, let's party! And I'm okay with both of those concepts as long as they learn to get along. And there's one thing they both have to have in common, is to protect the campsites, protect the wilderness, or it's not going to be around for you the next time. Please don't litter. Please do not cut down the trees on campsites. That way, it'll be there for the rest of us.
So as I wait for the snow to melt, I may have less to say, but as always...
Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please check out my other ones as well.